So nice to see you again. It's been so long. Let me see. So already start sharing my screen. Can you already all see my screen? Okay, perfect. And if you can all mute your mics, then I will slowly start. Let's maybe just wait one more minute. So I'm very curious to know if some of you have already started your first sugar-free day for everyone on the call. Actually, Marco and I were joining all of you. Usually we live by the philosophy that it's very healthy to do eat sugar. So it's not a forbidden fruit effect that you're getting and you start craving more sugar. So usually actually Marco is always laughing because after his dinner, his health coach, me, told him that he should have a piattino, and a piattino means a little plate of some cookies and some chocolate. So we usually, that's how we find the balance, that we are eating very healthily, but then after dinner we have our piattino to enjoy together. So Marco's like, oh my god, so how are we going to do this? So no more piattino? No. For 10 days we'll be joining all of you. So I'm going to get started. Welcome once again, everyone. I'm so excited to see your beautiful faces, and I'm even more excited that we're in this all together for the next 10 days to ditch our sugar, and especially the hidden sugar. So today I'll be discussing, first of all, and some of you are already familiar with it if you've already been in this workshop, what is the issue with sugar? Then how can we actually successfully reduce sugar? And then the 3 steps of the 10-day sugar rehab program. So to start off a little bit about me, so I used to be called Cookie Monster, so that is me on the left. Now it's been a long way, but also a big change to go from Cookie Monster to being a holistic health coach. So I'm a holistic health coach, nutritional therapist, yoga instructor, mental health first aider, happy dance lover. I'm sure we'll have the chance in these 10 days to do maybe a happy dance or share it in the WhatsApp group. And I've actually been a no sugar coach since I worked with the Swiss television in 2017. And so we've actually, Marco and I, together, we've been running this sugar program and the workshop since 2017 and literally all over the world. So whenever we traveled and we had a chance to share this with people, we did. And so many people have already gone through the program before you. So what is the problem actually with sugar? Well, it is hidden in about 80% of all of our packaged, prepared, and processed foods. So that is why it's so tricky, because a lot of people actually come to us and say, but I don't eat any sugar, I don't eat any sweets. Well, we'll see now that we consume so much more sugar than we are actually aware of. For example, if we look at some of the countries that have been studied, their sugar intake per capita, so per person per day, we see that this is actually a study from 2014 by Euromonitor, and we see that the United States is leading the competition. It was already almost 130 grams per day back then, and this trend has only been increasing ever since. So when we look now more on the top, so for Germany and the Netherlands, for example, we actually get in 2017 to a total of 37.5 kilograms per year. On the bottom here, we see France, which is 25 kilograms per year, which is actually already incredible. And as you can see, the consumption went up a lot from 2014, 2017. And lately it has continued the trend because sugar is very cheap. It's a very excellent conservative to preserve our food. So the industry loves it to use it for that purpose, but also because it knows that we are hooked on it, and once we start eating, we can't stop. But when we look at what our body can actually digest on average daily, it is a very different picture. So for women, our liver can roughly digest 6 teaspoons, which is equal to 24 grams of sugar. So 1 teaspoon equals 4 grams. For men, it is 9 teaspoons, so 36 grams of sugar. And for kids, it's 3 teaspoons, which is 12 grams. And actually, it is recommended that kids below the age of 2 should not have any sugar. So when we now think back of the example of the previous slide where we saw the US leading with 130 grams of sugar a day, we can see that there is clearly a big overconsumption of sugar. And this is really the issue. However, what is very important to mention is that here we are talking only about added sugar that our body is digesting. So when we look at added sugar, naturally occurring sugars are excluded. So these are fructose that we can find in fruit, lactose that we can find in dairy and milk products, yogurt, etc., and starch, for example, in carrots and potatoes. Why is this important? Because in this added sugar and the World Health Organization's recommendation of how many teaspoons we should have maximum on average a day, these natural occurring sugars are excluded. However, I want to mention to you that these are sugars. So if you have 10 pieces of fruit in the morning for breakfast, and I'm looking at my lovely husband, just kidding, Marco. So there are some fruit lovers. This still includes a lot of sugar, even though it is no added sugar. So you will also see in the program that there are some suggestions, like for example, during the 10-day sugar rehab, to have maximum of 2 pieces of fruit a day, to also take into consideration these naturally occurring sugars. So as you all know now, it is not just 1 teaspoon of sugar that is an issue, but it's really the extreme overconsumption of sugar. And how I always love comparing this to is like a glass of water, what you can also see here on the screen. So we have lots of different toxins in our environment, in our household, in our processed foods, alcohol, but stress is also very inflammatory in our body. So what this means is that actually a combination of all of these factors that are in our life, they put a burden on our liver, and they're highly inflammatory in our body, which means that we create little infections in our body. And then one drip too much, that is actually when the glass starts to spill over and we start to have health issues. So now the fun part of the webinar is actually I will show you how much hidden sugar is actually in our food. So as you remember, 1 teaspoon equals 4 grams of sugar. And I picked one example of a very healthy breakfast, and I'm laughing with that because probably by now you already expect that there is hidden sugar in here. So I took 1 glass of orange juice, just a normal glass, 90 grams of sugar-free cereal, so just 1 handful, and 1 small little vanilla yogurt. And when we look at how much sugar is hidden in this, even though everything is claimed to be sugar-free and organic, what we see is actually that the organic juice, the orange juice, still is 12.5 grams, so 3 teaspoons. That is because we actually took out the fiber and we only are left with the liquid when we make the orange juice. And that is what we have left is now basically water, so the liquid, together with the fructose, the natural occurring sugar in the orange juice. The crunchy cereals, what we see is actually there's still 20 grams of sugar, so 5.5 teaspoons. And even though these are sugar-free, they're still containing carbohydrates. So that is why we're still getting these sugars. And then lastly, the vanilla yogurt. I didn't pick a flavor yogurt like chocolate or caramel or strawberry, because that would have been much sweeter. But here we also see that already 180 grams has already 5.5 teaspoons in it. So we get to a total, just for our breakfast, 14 teaspoons. And I've got it here in a glass. I hope you can see it. It's actually almost one small glass full of sugar cubes. And this is only our breakfast. Then we're going to have our lunch, our dinner, snacks in between, and perhaps we have a birthday party, some cake. And that is when we start to understand the real issue with sugar. So it's really that accumulated overconsumption. And by the way, if you want to know in a yogurt what is the naturally occurring sugar and what is the lactose and how much is actually added sugar, you can take a natural yogurt and compare it to the flavored yogurt and see how much sugar is in each of them. And then the difference is the added sugar. But one of the worst ways we get a lot of sugar into our body is actually through drinking. So on this slide, we can see that in the drinks from Red Bull, which has 7 teaspoons of sugar in it, to even vitamin water, which sounds so healthy, 8 teaspoons of sugar, to the Starbucks tall chocolate frappuccino, which is the smallest one, by the way, also 8 teaspoons, and an innocent smoothie, which is not so innocent, with 5 teaspoons, because we took out all the fiber and we're still left with the liquid and the juice, the sugar. But not only can we find sugar in sugary things like donuts and cakes and chocolate and cookies, we actually have a lot of hidden sugar in unusual suspects that are savory. So for example, salad dressings, even salami or prosciutto, so ham, where they use it again as a conservative, or even very healthy protein bars that are also loaded with sugar, chips, potato chips, Pringles, and also sauces like tomato sauce. I also included here on this slide both the bread and the pasta, etc., because that is a simple carb, and we'll see very shortly that that is plays a very similar role in our body like sugar does, as also the alcohol. So what actually happens when we eat so much sugar? First of all, as I already mentioned, is that it causes inflammation in our body. So little infections, and that in the long run can lead to a lot of health issues. But it also suppresses our immune system, because when we consume sugar, basically that sugar prohibits the absorption of vitamin C. So our body cannot absorb as much vitamin C as usual. And we really need that vitamin C, especially when it's now the cold and flu season and we want to boost our immune system. It also creates in the long run heart disease. And you can even imagine that when you think of when you have sugar and it gets, for example, it's you have some coffee or tea, someone adds sugar and it gets in touch with some liquid things, it becomes very sticky. And this is what happens in our arteries also. So on the long run, that can actually create this narrowing of the arteries, this clogging up, and it may lead to heart disease. We also get sugar cravings because of the sugar spikes and swings in our blood sugar level, and I'll get to that in a bit. And also depression, because our gut is actually our second brain. And when we eat too much sugar, we're feeding all of the bad bacteria in our gut. And so we're destroying the balance in our gut between the good and the bad bacteria. And we need both, but in an optimal balance. We also get energy swings. You may know that after some cake or chocolate that you feel very tired afterwards. Brain fog, that you can't think so clearly. And also hormone imbalance, because sugar has a huge impact on our hormone insulin. And our hormones work together like an orchestra. So they play music together. So if one starts to change, the whole song changes. So it has a huge impact on all of our hormones. Also the dental caries, and you may have heard your parents when you were little that you had to brush your teeth, and especially after eating sugar to prevent caries. And of course, we all know that actually sugar and the simple carbs may contribute to the type 2 diabetes in the long run and obesity. So again, it's not just one meal or one snack or one Christmas dinner, because we often hear that, oh my God, I put on weight because of the Christmas dinner. No, it's not that just one time. It's really the accumulation of all of the sugars together, either per day and or per week. So how can we reduce sugar? Well, very exciting that you're all here and we're going to do this together. So in the next part of the presentation, I'll actually map out the 3 steps for you. The first step is to stabilize your blood sugar level. Why is that so important? Because sugar has the following impact on our blood sugar level. So when we eat something, usually, and that happens with everything we consume, our blood sugar level actually goes up because of the spike of the calories we put into our body. And then it slowly starts to go down again, and until we feel hungry again and we get cravings, and so we get this up and down like a roller coaster. And this is what happens every time when we eat something. However, when we eat something with sugar in it or simple carbs that don't have enough fiber in it, we get very low crashes and very high spikes. What you get then is that your sugar cravings are getting stronger when your energy is dropping. And when your energy is back up, actually, your body needs more of the hormone insulin. And insulin is basically the key that whenever we have too much sugar in the system, it can open the cell door and it lets the sugar in there to be stored for a later time. But often we keep on consuming and eating and drinking that we will never actually get to consume those stored calories. And that is when we also see weight gain, for example, and especially around our body, our mid body, so around our belly area, because that is where we have the most important organs in our body. So it's actually very beautiful from our body that it's trying to protect us by storing fat there to make sure we're safe. But we want to be obviously in imbalance. So how can we actually reduce these very sharp spikes and low crashes? That is by limiting our sugar intake, the simple carbs like the white flour, bread, pasta, rice, and crackers, and the alcohol. That is not easy. That is a lot, and especially once you start reading the labels, you will see that there is so much sugar, and simple carbs are also usually a big part of our diet. But this will make a huge difference in your energy and feeling more energized throughout the entire day. And when you have less sugar cravings, it's also easier to keep it up, to reduce your sugar intake. So I will just explain a little more about the simple versus complex carbs, because you will see also in the program that we are also going to try to reduce our simple carbs, so the white flour products like pasta, bread, and pizza, because what we see there is that here on the left-hand side of the page, you can see that we have a very high spike in our blood, and we need much more insulin to then bring it back down again, that spike, and we get much more hungry and tired and sugar cravings. When we have, on the other hand, the complex carbs, so things that are whole grain and full of fiber, we actually can stabilize this blood sugar level impact much more. And we also moderate our insulin release, which helps a lot also in then not putting all of that weight on. So one tip that I can share is also that you can also add more fiber to your meals by adding, for example, chia seeds or psyllium husk, which are Flohsamen in German, because this will help you feel fuller, but also really stabilize your blood sugar level. So I usually call them the bodyguards of our sugar, so they protect the big spike. In your workbook, you will have every day, you will have a checklist of how to stabilize your blood sugar level. And these are all the items that are basically there for you to check. What is important that it's not about perfection, it's really about making progress. So during the 10 days, we'll try to reduce as much as we can all the sweets like cakes, candy, lollies, cookies, chocolate, etc. Also the simple carbs, white flour products. Also the high sugar fruit, for example, bananas, mango, pineapple, sodas, so everything, all the drinks with sugar in it, but also alcohol, and dried fruit, because that's a really concentrated source of sugar. And of course, the easiest step is already to ditch your sugar or artificial sweetener in your coffee or tea. As mentioned before, it is really that every small step of improvement counts. So really try to find a balance that works for you to avoid the forbidden fruit effect. And what is the forbidden fruit effect is when you start obsessing over, for example, sugar, when you want to reduce it, and perhaps you start obsessing so much that you only start craving it even more. So how to avoid obsessing over sugar is actually, I always use this example with the pink elephant, because when you tell people do not think about the pink elephant, the first thing they will think about is the pink elephant. So this is exactly what we want to avoid. And how do we do that? It's by actually crowding out sugar. So we're going to prepare, because failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So when we focus on all the yummy, healthy things that we can have and that we enjoy eating and drinking, and we make sure that we plan ahead our meals and snacks, that we always have a go-to and something at hand that is healthy, we actually leave much less room for sugar. So really enjoy your favorite healthy foods, and then you don't have to think about the pink elephant, you just think about all the other things that you love. So prepare at home or buy delicious go-to meals and snacks. Personally, one of my key tips is to use also frozen, ideally organic vegetables for homemade meals. This will save a lot of time cutting, chopping, etc. And you always have something in your freezer in case you're hungry and you don't have any fresh vegetables. Because I think in general, the general rule for this whole sugar rehab is almost a plant-based diet. Lots of vegetables, and then perhaps some grains like buckwheat or quinoa, and legumes like lentils. I think if you have those ready, for example, Marco and I, we make over the weekend usually a batch of one of those grains, and then we have some vegetables, and then we're actually ready and we have done some meal prepping. Also, what we usually always have ready in our fridge are carrots, cucumber, and celery, and perhaps some hummus with it. And personally, I love sunflower and pumpkin seeds. So all the seeds, they're tiny, but so nutritious and so really good for your health. And I would also suggest to limit nuts. I mean, of course, you can have some nuts, but I know for my clients that most of them want to lose weight. And if you want to lose weight, then I would advise to limit them because the nuts are very high in calories. And whereas actually the seeds, they're not. So you can enjoy lots of seeds and they're really full of nutrients. Our other go-tos are avocado, hummus, as mentioned before, some dark chocolate. If you really, really have a craving and you need something, then also find a balance for yourself, perhaps have a bit of dark chocolate. And we also love fresh coconut. You can find in a meal plan in the cookbook lots of other ideas and inspiration. And also during the days, we'll try to share in the WhatsApp group some more recipes and ideas for you. Because that is really important. Once you have some go-to, it will become much, much easier. Then the final step, awareness is really your superpower, basically. So when you can track and calculate your daily accumulated sugar consumption, and you actually know how much sugar is getting into your body every single day, that is, with that awareness, you can then start making a change. So in your workbook also, you have this food journal to really get insight into your sugar consumption, but also perhaps your sugar cravings pattern. Is it perhaps that in the morning you have sugar cravings because you're still tired, or perhaps in the afternoon, or is it after a stressful day, or is it because you are emotional? So this food journal can be really used. It's a tool for you to get insight into your daily sugar consumption, but also your own emotions and feelings around food. It is all explained in the workbook how it works. where you start is actually by reading the labels. And I think, as what I mentioned before, awareness is power. So always read labels, no matter what you eat, even if it's completely salty soup and there's no sugar in it. I would say your body is so precious. You want to make sure that you know what is getting in there. So to check for the sugar, there are two questions you can ask yourself. The first question is, does the ingredient list contain any sugar? So for example, in this example on the page, you can see, yes, there's 22 grams of sugar. And is the sugar among the first ingredients? That is usually when you look on the other, somewhere else in the pack and you see all the ingredients listed, because the ingredients are always listed in the order from the biggest amount to the smallest amount. So if sugar is earlier on in the ingredient list, you know that there's mostly sugar in it. And this is, for example, the case with Nutella. If you look at Nutella, I think the first or second ingredient is sugar. So basically, you're eating sugar with some oil and some cacao powder. And then the second question is, if there's sugar and if there's sugar among the ingredients, how much is in it and how much is in your portion? You can actually calculate that. I have had a lot of people asking me over these years, but Sabine, if you just want to tell me what should be the maximum amount of sugar? Well, my answer is always, it really depends on your portion size, because you can have a very low sugar product, but if you eat 10 servings of that, then you may end up again with a lot of sugar. And vice versa, you can have a piece of cake, but if you have a tiny bit of it, you probably end up eating less sugar than of the healthy products. So it's really the accumulated sugar that matters. But as a rule of thumb, I would say, if you look for, especially during this sugar rehab, if you look for low sugar products, look for something that has less than 10% of sugar in it. And I guarantee you it's very difficult. For example, my oat milk in the morning already has 6% of sugar per 100 ml. So it is quite challenging, I must say. And for sweets, I would say less than 20%, but then you do end up in the dark chocolate category, basically. But again, the most important is that you make progress and that you find a balance for yourself and something that is sustainable for you. So if you enjoy white chocolate, milk chocolate, whatever it is, just enjoy it in moderation, because then you will keep this up for the rest of your life, or for at least many more months or years to go. How to identify sugar is actually very important, because sugar has almost 60 different names. And on this page, you see many different names. So that is why it's so hard to identify hidden sugar. Overall, there are some tips that you can look out for, like when it finishes with O's, like glucose, fructose, etc. Syrup, which is pretty straightforward, concentrate, nectar, and malt. Also, I mean, my background is also marketing, so I would say from a marketing point of view, double check when the product mentions sugar-free, no added sugar, or naturally sweetened, because even in organic and so-called healthy products, because an apple never has that claim on it, or broccoli never has that claim on it. Lastly, what is very important is actually also to know what kind of sugar you're consuming, because there is actually a really big difference for our body. When we have normal white sugar, that sugar contains actually two molecules, one glucose molecule and one fructose molecule. The glucose molecule can actually be stored in our body, either in our muscle, in our liver, or in our fat cells also. But what happens with so for later, that's actually what I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, that molecule, the glucose, can be stored as calories for later to be burned off. So it will be stored as glycogen, what you can see here on the slide. The fructose, however, is actually digested in a similar way as alcohol. So it is a lot of calories, but it has no nutrient, so no nutritious value. So what happens there is that fructose gets straight into the liver, and it actually gets stored as fat. So especially if you want to lose weight, the fructose is especially the one to look out for. it is of course different if you consume fruit, because there you have all the bodyguards again, all the fiber, so that makes a difference. But it is very important to know this difference between glucose and fructose. And if you want to have an alternative for cooking, for example, or baking, I recommend the rice syrup. There's also brown rice syrup, because that contains no fructose at all. It is pure glucose. So a recap, we're coming to the end of the webinar. So action step 1, we will stabilize our blood sugar level. Action step 2, we will enjoy our delicious, healthy, homemade or bought snacks to crowd out sugar. And then action step 3, we calculate and track in our journal our daily sugar intake and what we're eating. So will it all be worth it? Because actually our clients usually experience in the first 3 to 4 days a detoxification symptom. So they feel more drowsy, perhaps have headaches, are feeling tired. So then during those days, you may wonder, can't someone else just do it? Well, eventually it will be all worth it. And I'm super, super proud of you for being part of this journey and for even having the courage to wanting to reduce your sugar intake, because as we mentioned before, it's hidden everywhere. But it will definitely be worth it. And also from our experience with working with people from all over the world, like we know that definitely you will have more energy, more stable energy. You will feel fitter and just better overall. You will have less sugar cravings. Some even experience that after the 10 days that they try chocolate again, and actually their taste buds have already adapted so much that it's too sweet. And so they actually happily move from the milk chocolate to the dark chocolate. They have also better sleep and all the other benefits in the long run that you can also find back in the program. Thank you very much, everyone. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them still. And I'm also very excited you're all in a WhatsApp group. If you're not yet, you can still join us. Where I'll be sharing also daily motivation, some tips, and I'm there to answer your questions. If you want to share some recipes that you love, some go-to snacks that are healthy and low in sugar, of course, feel free to do so. You can also add some pictures of your meals, everything that can, basically motivate, and so we can share our journeys together.
Sabine, there was a question in the chat from Anna Maria. She was asking about Cola Zero. Maybe you want to comment on that?
Yes, thank you very much, Anna Maria. That's always a hard one to answer, because it depends on how you look at it. So if you go from Coca-Cola, the normal one, to Coca-Cola Zero, you'll be like, oh, that's amazing. You've ditched all the sugar that was in the Coca-Cola. But unfortunately, there are also some issues with the Coca-Cola Zero, because we're basically we're trying to trick our body in this case. We're trying to trick it in giving it something that has no nutritional value. So it's very hard, because our body wants to survive. So it's there like, oh, I feel something in my mouth. I'm getting calories. This is nutritious. Yay. And then it comes down. It's like, what happened? I don't know what this is. And so mostly even there, the sweeteners that are used in these sodas, they again have a huge impact on our hormones. And what happens most of the time, that also the insulin still comes to the rescue, basically. And it also has a huge impact on our cortisol also, because it's actually very stressful for our body that something comes in our body that is not nutritious and it can't be recognized as proper food. So again, we get back into that story where it starts to store everything as fat that we get, and it becomes more picky. So the next time something comes in, it's like, oh, can I trust this? Is this actually something nutritious? So if you can moderate it and balance it, that you can limit it, I would say that would be best. Of course, as what I said, it's already an improvement from going from the Coca-Cola with all the sugar in it to being sugar-free. But unfortunately, our body is so intelligent, we can't really mess around with it. It needs nutrients, and yeah, the Coca-Cola Zero is not nutritious for our body. So I hope that I'm sorry for the disappointing answer, Anna
I
Maria.
finished the last bottle in my refrigerator today, so that's good.
Wow, but that's already amazing. Wow. Well, that's the thing. Every step of progress matters. That is the most important.
Jacqueline was asking about carrots as next. I think she also says she realized that you mentioned it already, but I don't know if you want to
Yes, you can
briefly
definitely have it as snack.
mention.
Carrot, it is again a starch, so also naturally occurring sugar. Um, we personally love actually carrots because of the sweet taste, and perhaps you're even referring to that, Jacqueline, because I think also if you have cravings, carrots, pumpkin, so anything starchy and sweet can actually also reduce those cravings because you're still like we're not tricking our body, we're actually giving it nutritious food that is sweet, and it is full of fiber. So from that point of view, it is actually an excellent snack and alternative. Some people argue that carrots are too sweet. I'm not that extreme. The only thing that I would warn for is that people tend to make carrot juice. So they juice it, but then again, they remove all the fiber, and all we're left with is the liquid with the fructose or the starch in this case. So then again, we're back to just sugary water. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
And Catherine is asking about how to calculate the total. So how to calculate added sugar. No, for total recommendation for total sugar intake per day. Yes. Gareth was asking, actually. Sorry.
So the total added sugar recommendation is what we saw all the way in the beginning. So it's 6 teaspoons for women and 9 for men. So that is on average. But it's a very good question because there is a distinction. So I would say everything that has a label on it, so you can track the sugar in it, that you can count in your daily food journal. Everything that you can't track, so for example the carrots, even though there is the sugar starch in it, that doesn't count as added sugar. It is a natural occurring sugar. So that is how the distinction is made, and to calculate it, I would literally start writing down everything you're having during the day, see if you can track it somewhere on the package, how much is in it, and then try to calculate your portion. The portion size isn't always that straightforward, so you can also do some rough estimates. The point there is that it doesn't have to be 100% accurate, but more that you get a global idea of like how much sugar you're actually consuming, because the aha moment of the people I've worked with is usually, oh wow, okay, I consume much more sugar than I knew, because most of the people say, oh, I don't know, but I'm not so much into cookies or chocolate or donuts, but then actually they don't realize how much sugar is hidden in so many foods. So that is really the point of that exercise, I hope. Does that answer your question, Gareth?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
So nice to see you. Thank you. And just look, any more questions? How about exercising cravings for sure? Oh, that's actually a very good point also, Titalia. Welcome, by the way, very nice here. The one thing actually for exercise, and I think maybe Marco can even explain this much better than I do because he's really into exercising. When you exercise and you do it hardcore, so not my style, but more Marco style, then actually sometimes you need pure glucose because your blood sugar level can already drop a lot because of the intense exercise.
It's exactly what I experience. Sometimes I just, after the exercise, I have this 1 hour later, this real serious craving for sugar or something sweet. And I've been managing to do this with a big bowl of fruit salad, which I make myself. I just cut the fruit and put it together, but it's definitely not 2 pieces of fruit as you recommend for this next 10 days.
But that is good. I think I thank you for sharing, Italia. And I think actually you have already found I think the magic bullet for yourself, because during or after sports, sometimes like you literally need just pure glucose. And so, I mean, of course, the fruit is more fructose, so you could even consider something else that is, for example, there's actually the homemade chocolate also in there, and I make it with the rice syrup, so that is no fructose in it, it's only glucose. And something like that, I mean, the fruits, obviously, they're full of vitamins and minerals as well, so that would be one good alternative. But otherwise, you could consider something like the homemade chocolate with the rice syrup that has no fructose in it, or just a piece of dark chocolate, because I do know, and Mark, correct me, but I do know that when your blood sugar level goes that much down, the same for people who are fainting or something, actually the first thing they give them usually is orange juice to get the glucose, like the sugar rush into our body to pick them up again. So that I think it's really good actually that you are already so in tune with your body, Titalia, that you have realized that and you've already acted upon it, because that is a big warning also for people who do very intense exercise.
I certainly look forward to see and try your recipes on sweet substitutes, because there's days when I can control it perfectly, but there's days but my dream honestly is if I really go 10 days without sugar, completely cut it out. I have no problem with Coca-Cola or anything like sugary drinks or donuts. I don't eat this for never basically, but now I personally am here in order to make it to the little details, to cut out exactly these moments when I just go crazy for sugar, and I go for chocolate usually, but that's still, as you said, immediately the reaction is brain fog, tiredness, so much my body is reactive to it. So because usually I eat quite clean, so and this, in that sense, is Marco then, would Marco advise for 10 days, for example, less and more slow exercise, for example, Pilates or yoga, in order to make this balance, to do like a complete sugar detox? What do you think?
Yeah, perhaps if you go for a full, I don't know what type of sports you do normally, but if I am on a sugar, very low sugar restrictive phase, I typically tend to not do longer and more strenuous type of activities, because then you would really be struggling, and you don't want to, how they call it, bonk. If you are on a long run or a bike ride or a HIIT class and you don't have enough energy. So maybe it's a good idea if you do it for 10 days and you're really strict on the sugar intake to stick to a low intensity, moderate intensity exercise. Also, one tip for after the exercise, if you do some strenuous exercise, then you want to perhaps, if you have cravings afterwards, it helps me to eat something also with fiber and with proteins as well. So if you eat something with proteins, usually so seeds and nuts, things like that, or oats, then you feel full, and it's much easier to feel full. So you don't need to, let's say, binge, let me use that term, on fruits or sugary snacks.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Hope that helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it makes sense. I love nuts, yes.
But give it a try, and you can always let us know also in the WhatsApp group how it goes, and
No, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I will. Yeah.
Thanks.
For me personally, also, I think also the protein is very important, and then also the for example, the healthy fats. So me personally, I love like fresh coconut pieces, for example, in a moment like that where you still need something sweet, and it needs to fill you up, but it's still full of fiber. And the other thing that I personally love, especially when I'm more cold, and I'm always cold, is that I make myself this fluffy hot milk, like foam, and then I add some cacao powder, and usually it's an organic oat milk that I'm using, but it is still very sweet actually, even though it has no added sugar in it. And I personally love that hot chocolate. So that is also something that at least deals with my cravings. And usually I don't have it with my meals together because I don't want to dilute my stomach acids too much. But for example, we have dinner, and if I still have cravings later on, I would have an hour or 2 hours later, I would actually have this as my dessert later on. So
No,
perhaps
that's a great tip. Yeah, these are good tips for escaping the sugar,
yes, I know.
avoiding. Yeah.
There are some also for example for fruits. I personally love the pomegranate because it's still sweet, but also there I find that you can't really overeat as much also after sports, for example, and it's very low in sugar and it's so nutritious.
The pomegranate is low in sugar, really.
Yes,
I have a
read
feeling
it.
it's quite sweet, but no, it's great tip. I know it's very healthy for sure. So thank you.
Yes, no good. I mean, of course, I guess. I wonder if in Bulgaria maybe there's like much sweeter. Maybe the
No,
ones we
no.
get over here is like almost bitter, but it's.
Oh well, I don't know. I take in Switzerland sometimes for my daughter, but I think it's sweet. Yeah, I find it sweet. Anyway, that's not important. Yeah, such
No,
a
but it's a good
just
sign. I
a
think
detail. Yeah.
your taste buds are already then on a whole different level on the scale. It's like,
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I am very much looking forward to do the challenge.
yes, me
Thank you.
too. Very excited. Thank you all for your questions. I'm just looking.
Just one last question. I have
Yes.
this snack cookbook, which is supposed to be rather clean. And then when they do these snacks, they use as sweeteners often dried fruit. So from when you just shared the presentation, then you wouldn't go with these in the cookies or anything as sweetener.
Well, I think that's a perfect example. Thank you, Catherine. Like, just look at your total consumption of the day, because I'm sure that there can be room in it for it, and especially because I'm talking about dried fruits more in terms of like, for example, Titalia's exercise example, where I had clients in the past and they would just go like, oh, I did sugar, but then they're having like, I don't know, 100 grams of dried figs on the day, and then wondering why they didn't lose weight, and we're like, okay, good, that's like just a concentrated sugar, and I think the dried fruits, like if you look at it, it's 70 or 80 grams out of the 100 grams. So 70 or 80% is actually pure sugar. But of course, if it's in a little bar, for example, also in a love choc bars, that's also, for example, if I really, have a very strong sugar craving and I want something, you can still have just one small piece, and then it's actually very, very small amount of sugar that you're getting into your body. So I would say look at your total consumption of the day, or even at the week. You can also take a week's average, because I'm sure that sometimes you may have like a birthday party and have something more sugary, and then you can benefit the day after or before or somewhere else. So it's not necessarily bad, but for me it's really important to kind of share that message with people, that the dried fruit is not necessarily healthy just because it's fruit, because you usually even see it's kind of like this crystal layer around it, the crystal sugar. So does that answer your question?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I see in the chat that Citalia is saying, oh la la, so much sugar in dried fruit. Yes, it is really incredible. And especially if you look at the dried mango, dried figs, dried also dates. Mark and I, we also we used to make them cacao date balls. So we would soak the dates in the, all night long and then add cacao. And I think that recipe is also in the cookbook. And we love it, but it's very good. But I must also say, after one small bowl, I'm like completely full already. So there is also a good thing that at least it makes you feel full. So it's not like the empty calories that just, or the lots of calories without any nutritionist value. Good. Any more questions before we stop? No. Well, I want to say really so well done for being here, for showing up for yourself, for your own health. And I'm super, super proud of you. And I think it's so exciting that we can do this all together. And yes, anyone, if you're having a moment of despair and you wanna, you're about to put that cookie in your mouth or like chocolate, you can always reach out to the WhatsApp group. We will be there to support each other, and you can always ask all of your questions. So thank you so much, and I wish you the best of luck for the next 10 days. So exciting. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.